So this is the KhoodeelaarTV Television Channel, Part A, on Sunday the 29th of January 2023. This is Part A of the KhoodeelaarTV Television Channel. We're broadcasting on the internet under the banner of Baby Angel Geronimo editions. Baby Angel Geronimo is witnessing the latest confession by the conservative mainstream media that Boris Johnson has been a steaming dog mess on Britain's pavement. Boris Johnson, a steaming dog mess on Britain's pavement. That is citing Parris. Parris writing in the Murdoch-owned Times newspaper on page 25 under the main banner of comment. The heading being Sunak needs to change the narrative fast. Capable he may be, but the Prime Minister must discover a bold streak and shed some ministers or risk being branded as hopeless. And the last paragraph in Matthew Parris's piece is to survive, Sunak and his cabinet must shake off any suggestion of continuity with Johnson's. Trust may just have been a bad dream, but Johnson was a 2019 to 2022 reality, a great steaming heap of dog mess on Britain's pavement. Rishi and his cabinet and cabinet secretary are beginning to look as if they've stepped in it. They've stepped in the dog mess that is Boris Johnson's continuity and are now treading it into the number 10 carpets. Do or die, Sunak must throw off those shoes containing Boris Johnson, the dog mess. Now, this is a confession that Boris Johnson is a dog mess is not something that Baby Angel Geronimo needed to see, because Baby Angel Geronimo has been witnessing the dog mess on Britain's pavement, with Boris Johnson being incumbent at number 10 Downing Street and colluding with the depraved dog messes at the DEFRA, the evil mess called Christian Middlemess, evil mess called George Evilness, Injustice, Eustace. So Boris Johnson being branded a dog mess is nothing new for the Baby Angel Geronimo, who witnessed 4 years of dog mess, dominating and leading and defying all due process, all calls of fairness and justice, and the dog mess defying compassion and dog mess defying the evidence that Baby Angel Geronimo is the world's most innocent, the most perfect, healthy being defamed, demonized by the collection of dogmasses fronted by the dogmas called Boris Johnson, based at number 10 Downing Street. So this confession, Sunak needs to change the narrative fast and get rid of the dogmas shoes that he is wearing, treading into number 10 Downing Street. Dogmas reminiscent of and containing Boris Johnson, the dogmas personification. In this edition, we shall also comment on the 5 black-skinned evilnesses wearing Memphis, Tennessee in the USA police department uniforms, beating to death and murdering the innocent black man, Tyre Nichols. And Tyre Nichols' murder supersedes in intensity and in depravity the murder of George Floyd 3 years ago. And that shows that the United States is the world's worst society where it comes to human rights, where it comes to upholding due process and universal laws. The United States is maintaining Guantanamo Bay. None of the people in the Guantanamo Bay has been even suspected of doing anything a fraction as evil as the 5 black-skinned murderers of Tyre Nichols have done. Yet Guantanamo Bay is persisting there. And the black-skinned opportunist criminal incumbent in the White House for 8 years, Barack Obama, festered in his complicity with the corrupt criminal state of the USA administration. So the latest murder by black policemen of the black innocent person, Tyre Nichols, is not a one-off. It's not an exception. It is a continuation of the evilness that Barack Obama, the exploiter of blackness, actually festered in, perpetuated, and left behind as the legacy. So we shall be talking more about this in due course in the coming editions, because the issues surrounding the Tyre Nichols murder are too many to be adequately discussed in one edition. Now, this is the Khoodeelaar television channel, Baby Angel Geronimo edition. This is the world exclusive. When I say the phrase world exclusive, we really do mean that. No other platform on the internet is saying anything comprehensively, contextually, what we are saying. And what we are saying today, this week, in this edition, and in the editions that are to come, about the murder of Tyre Nichols is part of the moral, ethical commentary that we have been making under the Baby Angel Geronimo editions. Because Baby Angel Geronimo, as we say, is the witness, universal witness to the evilness that has been the United Kingdom state. And we extend that description on the evidence, strictly on the evidence, to cover the USA. And the fact that there was a slogan called Black Lives Matter to emphasize the importance of black lives being imperiled, being murdered, being denied by the racist police in the USA in the wake of the murder of George Floyd. Those values that have been supposedly drawn attention to and upheld by the campaigners have been trodden on now by the five black skinned Memphis, Tennessee police evilnesses that have beaten to death 27-year-old Tyre Nichols. The lessons of these, the issues that are risen by this is not just confined to Memphis, Tennessee, but confined right across the what is called the USA, covers Canada, covers the so-called Western world, and covers the United Kingdom, where the racism, the racist hatred, the incitement of hatred, hostility against black people is tolerated, has been tolerated, has been condoned by black-skinned careerists, opportunists, placemen and placewomen, including as typified by the evilness called Trevor Terrible P-lips. Trevor Terrible P-lips is given tokenistic platform by the racists in the media, racists on the Sky News, racists on the Times, racists on the Daily Mail and the Daily Mail group. What Trevor Terrible P-lips has done, taken to the extreme, logical extreme, the five Memphis black-skinned policemen have done by beating to death the black man, Tyre Nichols. Trevor Terrible P-lips has been the official mental slave for 4 decades in the UK. And his main duty assigned to him by the racist masters, handlers, has been to demonize black people. Extend that to take Lenny Henry. Lenny Henry was launched as an anti-black comedian. For 10 years, for the first 10 years of his career, given to him by the mainstream BBC and the mainstream other parts of the British media, the first 10 years of Lenny Henry were brazenly dedicated to intentionally making fun of African people. Various names are available, accessible on the records of Lenny Henry, and the recorded outputs fronted by Lenny Henry. For him, belatedly to say that he has been struggling against racism all his life is a crime in itself, and he should be multiply prosecuted for lying, criminally lying. Now, if Lenny Henry can be as cruel, as ruthlessly cruel and insulting to the collective image of African people or people of African origin, then imagine the hostility, the incitement to hatred that Henry has represented against people of Asian backgrounds and people of other non-African, non-European backgrounds. And the same thing applies to the various individuals that are appointed as tokens in the various institutions, agencies, black-skinned, the African ones, black-skinned ones. If you look at the behavior, their attitude towards other black people and people of other subcontinental, like African background people, and also people from Pakistan, people from India, people from Bangladesh, etc. You can see their venom, the hatred, the intolerance. The report by the Times newspaper group during the week on the Guardian newspaper, Guardian media, apologizing to a Hindu Indian writer for several years that who worked on the Guardian, Vivek Chaudhary. I mean, this is something that has not been commented on by the Guardian itself, has it? Publicly. The Vivek Chaudhary, let's see if we can find the Vivek Chaudhary piece that the Times newspaper has actually published. Let's see if we can find the Vivek Chaudhary. It's not coming up, but we shall hopefully. Okay, this is the piece. It's the Times newspaper. It's a Friday, the 27th of January 2023. And it's timed at 10:30 p.m. And the headline is Guardian journalists apologize to former colleague who complained of racial abuse. And there is a picture of a man, and the caption underneath says Vivek Chaudhary. It's spelled Chaudhary, Chaudhary. The usual, the majority of the spelling of the Chaudhary bit across the subcontinent ends with an Hury, but here it is, which is also available, but it's a minority form of spelling. Vivek Chaudhary worked at the Guardian for 15 years, so several years, I said. Journalists at the Guardian have apologized to an Asian former colleague who was ostracized after complaining of racial abuse. This is a piece that is absolutely kind of representative of the pieces that could be written about the Guardian, the racist Guardian. So Vivek Chaudhary wrote to Catherine Vaina, the newspaper's editor, describing his dismay at the failure to support the boycott of a local pub after he, Vivek Chaudhary, complained that a member of the staff called him a paki. Its journalists have now voted unanimously to apologize for the lack of regard towards racism and its victims. News of the apology comes after 3 podcast producers working on a series about the Guardian's historical links to the slave trade accused it, that is the Guardian, of institutional racism. Well, the rest of it is in a similar vein because it's in the Times newspaper. Now, my interview with the racist woman who is now the health editor of the Guardian, my interview in March, beginning of March 1992, when I was leading the campaign against the racists at the Stratford School in Newham. My interview lasted, I would say, under an hour, but it was obviously recorded by her. But when she put the piece in the Guardian, in the Guardian, she left out all the substance of what I was saying, what the campaign against racism was about. And instead, she added her own aggravated racism and racist hostility aimed at me. And who were the sources? The sources were Ken Livingston, Peter the racist Newsom, and a few others. I mean, why would she interview me about the campaign against racism that I was leading at the Stratford School, and then end up publishing a piece that was mainly intended to be hostile against me? Wasn't it to portray me as the wrong one for opposing racism? Clearly it was, because all the sources that she quoted as attacking me were sources that I had actually campaigned against separately previously for their racism. So the Guardian is not just racist in its own coverage. The Guardian has been racist against campaigners against racism, campaigners campaigning against racism elsewhere, and not just contemporaneously. Campaigners who have campaigned for decades against racism, which is the case with me. Because my campaign against the Greater London Council, as fronted by the liar Ken Livingston, took place took place years before the campaign against the racist Anne Snelling and the Stratford School bureaucracy and the Department for Education, etc., etc. Because it was Ken Clarke who was the Secretary of State, Conservative Secretary of State in 1992. And so, therefore, the Guardian journalist's apology to former colleague who complained of racial abuse is a reluctant apology. It's a not genuine apology because it has been forced on them. This apology has been forced on them by the series, the podcast about the Guardian's role in the slave trade. And Vivek Chaudhry was not given the apology he demanded. He was not given any support when he complained about the racism and so on. So, Guardian remains racist, and even the ones that are included in the bylines now, currently, some of the two or three of the Guardian's Asian byline holders, like Rajiv Sayal and Bikram Dodd, these are the two Indian origin, Indian descendant writers. They're not Muslims, they're Hindus or Hindu related. So the Guardian is aggravated in its hostility against Muslims. In the piece that the Guardian published in March 1992, it started by portraying me as a possible hero in a book by one of the famous Indian novelists. And this piece immediately descended into an attack on me. How that how illogical can that be? And the answer is that it is illogical, but it is still justified because it's done in an environment under a narrative of racism in the Guardian. And it all of it continues. And there are some comments that include this one. When is Catherine Viner, going to apologize to all the women journalists who have left recently, that left the Guardian recently? And there is a thing about the comparison with the Guardian. Guardian racism is being compared to the Yorkshire Cricket Club racism, and so on. And the Guardian supported the American South in the Civil War. The Guardian to the Mail Online. And the Guardian's racism is only a tip of the iceberg. So the Guardian is racist, of course, but the point is that the Guardian is also a pretentious, lying outlet in Fleet Street because it pretends to be loss, not so racist as the other outlets in Fleet Street. And when it comes to local councils like Tower Hamlets, the Guardian is absolutely committed as a supporter of the corruption fronted by Lutfur Rahman. We shall go into that again. When Lutfur Rahman was in post, in Tower Hamlets between October 2010 until he was kicked out on the 23rd of April 2015 by Election Commissioner Richard Morey, for variously described reason that he was a crook and a fraudster. The Guardian did not publish a single item about Lutfur Rahman's corruption during those years. Instead, the Guardian colluded with Lutfur Rahman by allowing at least a dozen or so articles to be published in favor of Lutfur Rahman during those corrupt years. And then when Lutfur Rahman set up this bogus poverty commission, deprivation commission, whatever, the Guardian, then being, quote, edited by Alan Rabisha, allowed his wife, Lindsay McKee, to be part of that commission. Also, in addition to Lindsay McKee, there was this crook, who was formerly born a Jew, but who became a Christian clergyman, which transformation shows his own corruption. He was the chair of the commission, and Lindsay McKee was a member. And at that time, the London kind of diary was being fronted by Dave Hill. And Dave Hill published any number of completely twisted excuses for the corrupt regime being fronted by Lutfur Rahman at Tower Hamlets during October 2010 until 23rd of April 2015. Let's see what the commission Okay, the commission is called Fairness Commission, and it is still accessible. It's kind of completely lying description. It says it's a new way of thinking and working together to consider the big issues facing the borough. It's absolute lies because the phrase Fairness Commission was borrowed from the litany of lies being told mainly by the Labour Party controlled councils across the rest of England. So this was nothing to do with Tower Hamlets creating its Fairness Commission. It was a complete lie, another lie, and Luthroman took part in the lie. And it says, which is a complete lie, between November 2012 and March 2013, the commissioners gathered evidence based on research and conversations with residents, businesses, and voluntary and community groups. That's a pack of absolute lies. There was one sitting arranged in Stepney, and when I arrived there was nothing. There was absolutely nothing there. And they said that several public meetings were held. It is an absolute lie. These were a joke. And what is happening is that this is nothing to do with the main culprit, the criminals in Tower Hamlets Council at various stages of decision making. These criminals are the ones that are doing the unfair things at Tower Hamlets. Whereas in that report, they don't have anything to do with the Tower Hamlets Council's unfairness. They're talking about other parties, other groups, organizations, which cannot be right, can it? The Fairness Commission was the one of the covers that hid the unfairness being done by the Tower Hamlets Council itself. So the Fairness Commission didn't even give an indication of the fact of the pervasive corruption and unfairness being done through and by Tower Hamlets Council during those years and in the years before, and those are being done even now after the return to the post by Luthroman on the 5th of May 2022. So the Guardian never published anything critical, anything truthful about Tower Hamlets Council bureaucracy. For that matter, the Guardian doesn't publish anything truthful critical about the corruption and criminality of Neom Council or any of the other councils. So we'll come to other parts of the newspapers, including the piece in the weekend Financial Times about India, about M.K. Gandhi, Mahatma Mohanlal Karamchand Gandhi. So the London Council officers blasted for being bloody rude to tenants stuck in mouldy homes. The mayor of Parris, Rahman, has blasted his own council officers for being bloody rude to social housing tenants living in moldy homes. Now that is a complete fucking lie. Rahman was put in a corner and was left with no option but to stage that. It's like Roxana Fiaz in next door Newham staging an apology at a meeting held in Canning Town in Barking Road on the 12th of November 2018, where the United Nations so called poverty envoy was attending a meeting organized by Community Link. And Rahman is lying in his staged telling off of the council employees because Rahman lied to me and is continuing his lying about housing in Tar Hamlets for a decade. More than a decade. Rahman lied to me on the 29th of October 2010 when I asked him outside the Brick Lane Mosque on Friday, the 9th of October 2010, to take the urgency of what I was saying seriously and sit down with me. And in that conversation, lasting less than a minute, or around a minute, Lutfur Rahman said, promised that he would sit down with me on this specific issue after he settled down as the then just incumbent, just installed occupant in the post. Let's see if we can find that sound. So this is the, well, you can't see that on the screen. So Lutheran lied to me on the 29th of October 2010. Lutheran lied to me on 15th of February 2011. Lutheran lied to me on the 6th of May 2010. And Lutheran lied by saying, consistently saying, that he, quote, praised me, admired me, and then he lied to me on the 20th of September 2012 at the basement of a restaurant in New Road called Marcos. So Lutheraman Intrahamles is a liar on the records that I can refer to. And the Guardian has never, ever remotely suggested that it is possible, let alone that it is actually proven fact that Lutheraman is a liar. Now, going over to the Weekend FT, which was published yesterday, Saturday, the 28th of January 2023, let's look at the piece by this individual that has been given a platform again by the Financial Times. The platform was given to him in 2021 by the Financial Times, and he was given that platform to write about India and India going rightwards. This one yesterday, in the heading says, as the heading says, is against M.K. Gandhi. That's on page, the Life and Arts FT Weekend. What page number is that? So that's the page 1 of the Life and Arts section of the Financial Times. Now, I'm having to, it cannot be held straight up. The nearest that can be done is this way, and it's to do with the technology, I suppose, that we are having to use. So that's the Life and Arts, and there's a kind of glimpse of M.K. Gandhi's face. And the headline is India against Gandhi. India against Gandhi is written by a man called Ramachandra Guha, who is described as being based in Bangalore. And his write up the introduction is a lie, because M.K. Gandhi was not the father of the nation, and he did not lead the struggle for freedom against British rule. The whole piece is against Muslims, really. And the whole piece is another pack of lies. And it doesn't refer to the Nehrus, Motilal, that is Jawaharlal's father, or Jawaharlal Nehru, or Indira Gandhi, really. And it doesn't refer to the fact that of the 1,300 million people, according to the kind of official census report in India, there are the majority of the ordinary people that are in the Hindu kind of category would not exceed 500 million. The others would be like the so-called scheduled castes, the untouchables, and other religious groups. So the fact that he's denying half or more than half of the population of the subcontinent shows that this is a stupid piece, misleading piece, is an untruthful piece. I mean, it would be quite annoying to have to read the contents of this piece as well. And the fact that he quotes the founder of the RSS as having said that Muslims will not be allowed to live in Hindustan is also completely misleading, because Muslims have been in the subcontinent, in the place that is called India now, and Pakistan and Bangladesh, starting within 100 years, I think. Starting within 100 years or so of Islam being established by the Prophet, peace be on him. So it's more than 1,000 years. And also, this Ramachandra Guha, the complete liar, pretends to be against the deniers of Mahatma Gandhi's, M.K. Gandhi's role, and he categorizes them as Marxists. Well, I don't accept that M.K. Gandhi was the person that he portrays him to be, because of the people who fought the actual empire, the British, there were people like Fazlul Haq, I mean, in the 20th century, that is, and other Muslims, and of course the Nehrus. And above all of those is Subhash Bose, who was the one that unified, who was the one that actually started the United Indian Army, the first time since 1857. Because 1857 is the what the imperialists call the Sepoy Mutiny, was the first comprehensive independence movement against the British. And for the following 60, 70 years, nothing similar happened. And when Subhash Bose actually began to mobilize, he was being cornered by Gandhi, he was being cornered by Jawaharlal Nehru, he was being cornered by the Indian National Congress and the others. not so much by the Muslims. This is a piece that is completely shallow and stupid and unjustified, the Ramachandra Guha, and the Financial Times is committing a crime, which is why I call it the financial crimes. And Guha is described in the Wikipedia as the author of several books, the books of lies that he has written. And there is no mention in Ramachandra Guha's piece in the Financial Times Weekend FT of the role played by the Indian mainstream media at all. The role being played by the Indian court system, which is corrupt, the role being played by the Indian police and the so called IAS, Indian Administrative Service. And he doesn't mention Mamta Banerjee, really, because it's Banerjee who has been really opposing the RSS, the BJP coalition in India today, has been doing so. And she has been doing not as a charitable work, but because of our own political survival and also for the very existence of people that the BJP is targeting. Not only just Muslims, but those who are not necessarily fascistic Hindus. So, what kind of piece is this? And why does the Financial Times keep publishing rubbish pieces like this? That is a question that we shall be asking again and again and investigating the reasons behind. Now, on to the Times newspaper of Saturday. Now, this is a piece that I have not commented on in anything like the way that I'm going to comment on now. The little column that the Times publishes and marks the birthdays of people that the Times publishes. I mean, this one on the Saturday, 28th of January 2023, the Times has a very representative of the Times list of people whose birthdays it actually observes or notes. And it, because it's a Saturday edition, there is no edition of the Times on Sunday. The Sunday Times is not the Times editorially, it's a very remarkably different kind of editorial agenda. They've got a list of people whose birthdays fall on Sunday, which is today. And this list is typical of the Times. Now, there is a item on page, well, it's a front page, but the item on page 3 where there is a picture of Brenda's daughter, Anne, uh, making the actor Alan Cumming an OBE at Buckingham Palace in November 2009. And this is the same actor who is being featured in the report. Star gives back his toxic honor. Toxic, for those who are not very familiar with the language, is of course another word for poison or poisonous. The actor Alan Cumming has returned the OBE he received 14 years ago, saying he does not want to be associated with the toxicity of the empire. There is a report by Poppy Karonka. The Scottish star, whose work ranges from Spy Kids to The Tempest, said conversations about the monarchy after the Queen's death had opened his eyes. Cumming was made an OBE in 2009 for his services to acting and activism, which included campaign work in the US at a time when same sex couples could not marry and openly LGBT people could not serve in the military. He wrote on Instagram to mark his 58th birthday. The Queen's death and the ensuing conversations about the role of monarchy, and especially the way the British Empire profited at the expense and death of indigenous peoples across the world, really opened my eyes. Also, thankfully, times and laws in the US have changed, and the great good the awards brought to the LGBT cause back in 2009 is now less potent than the misgivings I have about being associated with the toxicity of the empire. He added, I'm now back to being plain old Alan Cumming again. Many praised Cumming, who, who was born in Aberfeldy, Scotland, but lives in New York, for the decision, including David Ibanez, the first openly gay rugby player. He said so many people refuse to acknowledge the problematic history of the monarchy, including the monarchy themselves. This is an important statement. So, thank you. Others were less impressed. The broadcaster Darren Grimes said the empire, including Scotland's wholehearted role in it, was known long before he accepted it. Was he ignorant then or just virtue signaling now? When he first received the honor, Cummings' statement said that it made him really proud to be British. He backed yes in the 2014 referendum on Scottish independence, but said the debate was putting people off because it had become polarized. Other celebrities who have turned down honors include David Bowie, Dawn French, and Jennifer Saunders. Now, let's go back to the local councils and where is the where is the connection. Let's see where Roxana fears. Which one does she carry in Neom? So she is described in the wiki entry. Yes, she too has an OBE. She was born in 1971, it says, and she's a Labour Party politician serving as mayor of Neom. Let's So the point I made earlier that I was going to make today, I have not made that point before, is this. If you look at the list of the birthdays today, that is, the first one on Saturday was led by Roy Clark, comedy writer and creator of Last of the Summer Wine, aged 93. And second one is an American actor, Alan Alda, director, scriptwriter, actor, and he was in the MASH series in 1972 to 1983. He's aged 87. And the third one is a Tory MP for Winchester, 49, Steve Bryan, and then followed by Jessica Ennis Hill, heptathlete, Olympic gold medalist, 2012, and then followed by Philip Jansen, chief executive of BT 56, and then followed by Bill Jordan, president of the trade union AEEU, 87, and then Dame Anne Leslie, journalist, 82. Now, these are the people that are all either British, based in Britain, or in the USA. That means that the times, birthdays, don't occur in the rest of the world. The rest of the world do not have people being born, they don't have people doing anything significant or being notable for anything at all. That's like Little England denying the existence of the world, the rest of the world. And nothing happens in the rest of the world. So the Times is not a newspaper of record. Whatever distortions it has underwent or undergone in the periods since since it used to be more accurate and authentic in the context of the domestic internal British kind of events and records. So the denial by the Times of the rest of the world is typical representative of the denial by the Times of the whole world, everything else, which is why the mentality that Ramachandra Guha is repeating under the cover of India against M.K. Gandhi, the mentality is actually based. Mentality is based in the source of the servility. And it goes all the way back to Macaulay's maxim and Macaulay's agenda that the Indians, that is the people of subcontinent at the time, would be brown on the outside and English on the inside. You can go and do the details reading on Macaulay's actual utterances. And what is happening in the context of the return by Alan Cumming of his OBE and the retention of her OBE by Roxana Fias is more than just her retention. Because in the Newham Council website, they have been celebrating again the contribution of Brenda, the Queen Elizabeth II, who died recently. And if you look at the speech that Roxana Fias gave on the 16th of January at the old town hall in Stratford about the crisis faced by Newham Council in resolving, in dealing with, in delivering housing to the people in Newham, you can see just how complete is the hypocrisy, how complete is the dishonesty on part of Roxana Fias. What did she say? Let's check if we can access what she said. Now, there is a piece by Nevam Recorder dated the 20th of October 2022, which starts by saying, police were called after protesters stormed the public gallery at a Newham council meeting and demanded better pay for refuse workers. That is one protest, but the other protest is not on that one. This is the one that I am actually thinking of. One is by the BBC, which is headed Protesters Storm Council Meeting over Housing Crisis. That's the BBC one. And the other one by mylondon.news. Watch as Newham Council meeting descends into chaos. That is the 18th of October 2022. So that's a previous one. The latest one is this one by the BBC. And we'll go to the role played by Winston Vaughan, Councillor Winston Vaughan. Now, this one is a picture of a woman who was living in an overcrowded hostel with her child, and she was turned down a home close to her domestic abuser. Now, how could they offer her a home close to her domestic abuser, whom she was trying to escape? Protesters stormed a council meeting. Remember, we are talking about this item to get to Roxana Fiaz's contradiction and dishonesty. We'll go deeper into this piece if we can find the contents here, or you can do it by checking on another website. Protesters stormed a council meeting to demand justice for a woman and her child. They say, the protesters say, was left homeless when she turned down a home near her abuser. Monday's protest was part of an ongoing, Monday being the 16th of January. Monday's protest was part of an ongoing row over a temporary post hostel owned by Newham Council in the Stratford area. Campaign group Focus E15 described it on behalf of the woman and others living there as being in a shoddy, unsuitable, overcrowded building. The mayor of Newham said the borough had a traumatizing housing crisis now. Here it is. She's using the word traumatizing. If she is carrying the OBE, I mean, isn't there something very conflicting going on there? Because she was given the OBE for services to raise faith and what else? Let's check again because we don't want to kind of. Let's see what she is quoted as saying actually. Well, the Wikipedia entry on her getting the OBE. What was she given that for? Riaz was born in Highland Hospital to parents who had moved to London from Pakistan in the 1960s. In 2009, she was awarded an OBE for services for race, faith, and charity in 2009. So that was 14 years ago. Now, Order of the British Empire, what is it? Order, the most excellent order of the British Empire, is a British order of chivalry, rewarding contributions to the arts and sciences, work with charitable and welfare organizations, and public service outside the civil service. It was established on 4th of June 1917 by King George V and comprises 5 classes across both civil and military divisions, the most senior two of which make the recipient either a knight if male or a dame if female. Sorry, a knight if male or dame if female. There is also the related British Empire model BEM, whose recipients are affiliated with but not members of the order. Recommendations for appointments to the order of the British Empire were originally made on the nomination of the United Kingdom, the self governing dominions of the Empire, later Commonwealth, and the Viceroy of India. Nominations continue today from Commonwealth countries that participate in recommending British honours. Most Commonwealth countries ceased recommendations for appointments to the Order of British Empire when they created their own honours. And the motto of the Order of the British Empire is for God and the Empire. 5 classes of appointment to order, that is OBE, are from most to least important. Most is first, Knight Grand Cross or Dame Grand Cross, Knight Commander or Dame Commander of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, KBE or DBE, Commander of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, CBE, Officer of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, which is the fourth in the list of 5. So the Empire, OBE, and the last one is the MBE. Now, one Ruxana Fiaz says that housing, Mayor of Neom said that the borough had a traumatizing housing crisis. Now, that word linguistically examined, diagnosed. What does she mean, traumatizing housing crisis? Is it traumatizing to her? Or is it traumatizing to the victims of the housing crisis, housing failures, housing services by Neom Council? That is a question. Because we can't expect Roxana Fiaz to answer any questions truthfully, factually, or answer questions at all. That is based on the evidence of the past 6 years of contacts with her, trying to get her to answer questions. At the start of Neom Council's full council meeting on Monday, that is the 16th of January 2023, the protesters entered the Old Town Hall in Stratford to demand justice for the unnamed domestic violence survivor and her child, and other families, justice for other families living in the temporary social housing on Victoria Street, according to the local Democracy Reporting Service. One protester criticized the council for not respecting people as human beings during the interruption. Now, remember that item of news that we have commented on quite extensively in the last fortnight. of the mummified body found of Lillian John Baptiste in Cannington. That happened because Neom Council completely neglected the vulnerable woman during the most crucial years of her needs before she died. One protester criticized the council for not respecting people as human beings during the interruption. They shouted, "This is not housing justice." Now, housing justice is a cryptic kind of reference to the Church of England, so the kind of motto, there is one kind of narrative going on the side. But let's read the quotation in full. This is not housing justice. This is not respecting people as human beings who are already living in overcrowded accommodation in Victoria Street where people are forced to share beds, children and adults. That is what's happening. And if they say no to a property that is not safe and not suitable, that is, then the Newham Council doesn't give them the suitable and safe housing. The protester was cut off by the chair of the meeting. This is what I refer to as the person called Winston Vaughan, who said, "Thank you very much for that, but you are interrupting the meeting. Please, will you not interrupt the meeting? And will you kindly take a seat, please?" Now, what was the purpose of the meeting that he said should be continued if people were not allowed to speak? Now, that is typical of Winston Vaughan. Winston Vaughan attended an event organized and held at the Stratford Library, not far from the Old Town Hall, a month earlier, exactly, 17th of December 2022, organized by a thing called Newham Voices. And in introducing Ruxana Fiaz, who was there as the chief guest, which wasn't announced by the organizers before the meeting, Winston Bond declared himself as subordinate to Roxana Fiaz, whom he referred to as, quote, my boss. Further shouts could be heard from the back of the hall as protesters said, "What will it take to give us houses?" Mayor Roxana Fiaz, there is a YouTube picture of Roxana Fiaz, and the caption says, Mayor of Newham, Roxana Fiaz, says the Bara is expecting, sorry, reading again. Mayor of Newham, Roxana Fiaz says, the Bara is experiencing the most spectacular, traumatizing housing crisis it has ever faced. We'll come back to that statement by Roxana Fiaz. After the meeting was adjourned for a few minutes, the mayor, Roxana Fiaz, stood on stage and responded to the protesters. She said Newham's temporary housing budget was overblowing. Ms. Fiaz said, "Before I start my announcement for this evening, I did want to address the comments and the trauma that we have heard from the group of residents that currently reside in Victoria Street. And I want to give you this assurance. Every single month, and over the past 8 months, myself and the cabinet member for housing services have been holding meetings with all residents, and we are progressing with our plans to decant families with children from Victoria Street." She added, "We will be housing families with children in appropriate accommodation, but I have to say this, we are in the midst of the most spectacular traumatizing housing crisis this borough has ever faced. In the previous 12 months, there has been a reduction in housing supply by some 47%. Our temporary accommodation budget is overblowing. We want families with kids to be living in safe, habitable, healthy properties, and we campaign, and we want housing justice for our people. But we have got to ensure that there is equity and fairness for everyone, because we have some we have over 37,000 people on our housing waiting list, not just in temporary accommodation. Ms. Fiaz said it would be unfair to put families ahead of people who had been waiting longer on the council's waiting list for homes, and said every single family in Victoria Street has had every single opportunity to email me directly or email the cabinet member for housing services. Now, that is a typical Roxana Fia's lie. Read that again. Every single family in Victoria Street has had every single opportunity to email me directly or email the cabinet member for housing services. Let me check what Roxana Fias does with emails which are transmitted to her. Let's see what. Just an example, factual example. This is the email address, roxana.fias at the email address that is operated in her name. Now let's see how many emails to that address have been sent. Now, on this list from this originating email address account, let's say starting starting in September 2019, there are 133 emails. The 133 emails on a general log check, if we do the detailed analysis, then it would be like almost 200 transmissions and communications. Some of those would be Roxana's response, but there is no reply to any of these emails that she has been sent from this particular email address, except one, but that too was not from her. That was from the mayor's office. Only one off? Really? Only one off substantial email communication from her office designed as mayor's office. So of the 200 emails, if we cut down the ones that may be treated as draft or not complete, say about 50 of them, still there are 150 emails that have been sent to Roxana Fias from September 2019 up to this month, and she has not replied. So Roxana Fias is lying in saying that residents single family in Victoria Street has had every single opportunity to email me directly or email the cabinet member for housing services. Now, read that again. She said those people have had every single opportunity to email her. That doesn't say that I have replied to any emails. And that is the secret of the liar Roxana Fias. So, what was she honored for? For lying? Of course, she was. Roxana Fias, during the period of Gordon Brown being in the incumbency at number 10 Downing Street, she was recruited as one of the about 16 or 17, quote, Muslim women by the community secretary at the time, who was a racist herself, anti Muslim. And the purpose behind Roxana Fias being among those 16 or 17, quote, Muslim women being recruited to constitute what? They were recruited to serve as Gordon Brown's spies on Muslim women. Who are these Muslim women that Roxana Fias and the others were recruited to spy on? So she's a spy. Not a very good spy, because if she were telling the truth about the state of most Muslim families, Muslim women in the United Kingdom, she would have to say a compelling story about the discrimination they suffered, the abuse they suffered, and the denials they suffered. There was nothing really suspicious among the Muslim women to spy on. And in the published accounts of Neom Council, which is kind of trying to exploit the traumatizing sufferings inflicted on Neom Council's negligence on housing, to make it is Roxana Fias who is being traumatized. Let's make it clear. She wrote to Rishi Sunak sometime in late 2022 asking for money. And here she is saying that the housing crisis in Newham is the worst that it has ever had. Let's look at the number of years she has been in post. Fias has been in post since, let's say, 4th or 5th of May 2018. So if we start the calendar years 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 6 calendar years. And this was the occasion, the 16th of December 2022, when Fias made the first ever public statement in those 6 years, giving anything like that kind of extreme scenario and the extreme kind of pressure about housing crisis faced by Neom Council. She does not say what the councillors, elected councillors, have done or said about the housing crisis. She does not say how many elected councillors received how many items of evidence about the crisis in housing from their electors, their ward residents. And she doesn't say what Neom Council has done in responding to each of the persons, each of the families in increasingly worsening situation on housing. Essentially, Roxana Fias is a practiced liar who is in denial. What she has said at the meeting on the 16th of December 2022 is another dramatization of her tactical, opportunistic peddling of herself. Now, there is no published account as to what substantial response, if any, Newham Council has received from Rishi Sunak in reply to Ruxana Fiaz asking for money from, from the central government. But let us say this, even if there is £100 million, which is impossible to expect, any number of any amount of money coming from central government to Newham Council or to Tower Hamlets Council for that matter is not accounted for to the people, is not accounted publicly for the knowledge, for the assessment, for the understanding of the electors in the borough. There is no system. And there is no legally, there is no accountability that is compulsorily put on the shoulders of the local council to make known to the people the income that it receives under disadvantage, deprivation, etc., which is what Roxana Fiaz has said to Rishi Sunak. The actual receipt of money, the income that the council receives from local people, council tax and so on, is not accounted for. And none of the elected councillors in a council where the chief executive is the elected mayor, none of the councillors really has an effective say. That is the ordinary status. But even if a councillor were to be minded to speak up about the failures of the council bureaucracy, the negligence by the council's bureaucracy, the cruelty by the council's bureaucracy, there would be legally no barrier to them speaking up. But the fact that there is no record of councillors publicly speaking against the council's negligence, cruelty, lack of compassion, and lack of honesty shows that the councillors themselves, collectively, the Newham's elected councillors, are a collection of crooks and liars and opportunists and self servers. When she is surrounded by a bunch of liars, crooks, and self servers, it is no wonder that Ruxana Fiaz can tell lies with impunity because she knows that she won't be under pressure from the elected councillors to stop lying and to start telling the truth. Of course, that will be continued. Now we go back to the item that is on the front page. Now here is a piece on the Sun of Saturday, which says, exclusive shock interview. S Club Hana homeless. Pop star was forced to live in office. Now this is something that is unprecedented, really. That is S Club Hana homeless. This is the Sun. Now homelessness is not something that Rupert Murdoch's son, which you normally call scum, but let's call it is known for. So this is the piece on the two-page spread, pages 4 and 5. And the two-page spread is headed exclusive interview. S Club Hannah, Hannah's Hell. We had to stay at Pal's place at Xmas. We made living in office fun for kids. Just 17 and in seven heaven. People think we are millionaires, but we have nowhere to live. That is S Club Hannah. If S Club Hannah, who has got the platform, given to her by the Sun itself on page 3 pages, front page, splash, and also the two-page spread on pages 4 and 5. And if even she says they have nowhere to live, imagine the severity of the real trauma experienced by people who are really denied all support by the local council like Newham. So the front page of the S Club Hannah Homeless edition of the Sun says, S Club 7 singer Hannah Spirit was left homeless at Christmas. Despite her global fame, she reveals today. The 41-year-old, whose band raked in 50 million, had to live in an office with her partner and their two girls. She said the kids' beds were there and we had the crayons out. It was stressful. And the main piece on page 4 by Stephen Moyes, Associate News Editor of The Sun. And it says, S Club 7's Hannah Spirit today tells of her family's homeless hell after her landlord sold that rented pad. The pop icon 41, partner Adam Thomas 42, and their young daughters had 2 days to find a new place. Now, this is the story, of course, is all on the Sun, so it can be accessed. I mean, it's accessible. Unlike the Times, the Sun, belonging to the same stable as the Times and the Sun, together they belong to Rupert Murdoch's operations. The Sun has got no paywalls. That is to say, items in the Sun mostly are accessible on the internet. So this can be read in full on the internet. The point we make about Tar Hamlers is that Lutfur Rahman lied about housing and he lied about the severe damage that was being caused to the storage devices containing decades of original world exclusive contents, writings. The details of Lutfur Rahman's lies cannot be again included in a broadcast of this length. So we shall be organizing the time and the actual management of the conveying of the information for another edition or a number of editions later. Suffice to say that Lutfur Rahman, who is intellectually challenged, that is to say, he is cognitively challenged. We have discussed that before. But the relevance of referring to that again here is this. If he is cognitively challenged, then how is it that so called left wing kind of promoters like the Jacobins, the liars based in America, and the various versions in the UK keep running propaganda pieces calling Luther Roman a socialist and praising him politically. And the answer is the operation is done by a so called left winger, former Labour Party member called Jenny Fisher. Jenny Fisher is a proven liar and a racist denier. So, why is a racist liar like Jenny Fisher backing Luther Roman? We shall discuss Jenny Fisher, the liar, and the benefits that she is apparently foisting on Luther Roman in due course. We shall end this particular edition at length is 1 hour 45 minutes. We didn't broadcast anything yesterday, that is Saturday, because the internet connection was not available. So the internet connection has been restored this morning. So we are broadcasting this. So we didn't broadcast anything on the 25th of January. And again, we didn't broadcast any edition on the Saturday, the 28th of January. And the next edition or editions will be broadcast in due course, and we shall be talking extensively about India, about M.K. Gandhi, and about the lies of Ramachandra Guha, and the reason for the lying by the Financial Times, which is corruptly edited by a Muslim woman born and raised as a Muslim in the Lebanon, but who is now acting as a mental slave for the racists and anti-Muslims, as is evident in the contents of the Financial Times about India and against Pakistan as well.